Okay, this video is going to give you some very important advice about an assessment that your teacher will have told you is going to be happening in the next week or two. And please pay attention to all the advice I give you in this little lesson today, because it will help you revise. Now, what I would recommend as I go through my main revision advice is you develop some of your own notes, maybe on flashcards or writing out some of the ideas in the different assignments that you've completed in class, towards helping you prepare and giving you something you can look at the night before or even the day of the assessment itself. Also, what I would recommend that you will need your classroom jotter in which you have been drawing your diagrams. So if you haven't yet received that from your teacher, make sure that you have that jotter, because there are some very useful diagrams that you've developed that might be assessed. So let's have a little look at what you are going to be assessed on. Now, assignment 1, 3, 4, and 5 all contain information and knowledge and skills of which you might be assessed. Not number 2. Number 2 was the assignment for the newspaper report that you wrote. So you don't need to look at number 2. But let's have a little look at each assignment and think about what are the key learning outcomes. So the first thing you're going to want to be able to do is make sure that you have a very good reason and are able to explain why people might be choosing to live next to volcanoes, both in the past, but also today, in the modern day, because there are many people that still do live next to volcanoes. And you don't want to just be able to write a list, but you are looking to be able to describe in detail why those different aspects of the landscapes around volcanoes or the benefits that volcanoes might bring encourage people to live in those areas. And that is not just the people of Pompeii and Herculaneum 2,000 years ago, but the people of Naples today, as well as people who live in volcanoes all around the world. So that's one very important theme, and that's the main theme from that first assignment. The rest of that assignment was actually building up notes on the eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. Okay, so make sure you've got that written down and maybe think about some of the things that you would need to write there to write a good answer. Let's have a look at assignment number 3. So what were the key ideas here? Well, apart from being able to name the different layers, what's more important about this particular assignment is that you understand why the plates are indeed actually moving. So we have 2 types of crust, but those bits of crust are actually on the move. So you're going to need to be able to describe in as much detail as you can why the crust is moving. You'll have drawn a diagram and you've built up a lot of detailed information about how the core interacts with the mantle and then what happens within the mantle that causes the crust to move. And you'd be looking to be able to write some descriptive statements that help the reader understand that you understand why the tectonic plates are indeed moving. And the more detail you can give, the more likely you are to score high. So that's the key theme in assignment number 3. Okay, once you've built some notes around that, let's look at assignment number 4. So what's the main bit of material? Well, there's quite a lot in this assignment actually that you're going to want to know. First of all, you're going to have an idea about the different directions that plates move. But more importantly, if we just go down through this task, it's the bit of work at the end which we did on why we know that they've moved from their previous locations. And you'll have built up a series of pieces of evidence with descriptions and explanations of that evidence and how that is how we know that the plates have moved from their ancient positions to their current positions and will continue to move in the future. So the more piece of evidence that you can offer and the ability to write in depth about the different reasons that we know that evidence is proof that the plates have moved will get you a good score for this particular question. Okay, the final assignment has a number of things that you're going to want to be able to do. The first one is you will have been shown in class how to describe the distribution of something, in this case, volcanoes across the planet. And you're going to be required to do that same skill using a source that you're given, a map in this case, that shows something which you're then going to have to describe in detail. So you will have developed up an answer to that in class. You'll have also drawn a diagram and been asked to explain in your own words how volcanoes are actually formed. So a volcano is a mountain made up of layers that sits on top of the crust, and there's something happening with the crust itself and below the crust with plates meeting at a destructive plate boundary. So you have to bring together all that knowledge to tell the story of how these volcanoes are created. And of course, you might be asked to draw a diagram, and that's why you would require a jotter to have a look at the diagram that you developed. But also, the information that you wrote about that process will also be very useful in giving a full explanation for how volcanoes are formed. Okay, so you can play this video back a number of times. What's important is that you don't just look at the 4 assignments and your class jotter, but you also think about maybe writing some of the key things that I've said that you're going to need to be able to do, and then developing some spider diagrams or some study cards or some of your own notes to ensure that you, when you counter each of these questions, you can give as much information that demonstrates you understand. Good luck.